I think I'm happy that the honorable members have raised the issue as to where this structure should account. There was a clear decision on the part of the executive, but also on the part of the Joint Standing Committee on Financial Management of Parliament, that the steering committee, which will be leading this process, will account to the Joint Standing Committee. Because remember, at the time, there was even a bit of confusion about whether there would be some other multi-party committee, and then you gave clear guidance that there won't be any other committee between EXCO, the management, and the Financial Management of Parliament Committee. So clear, this is where we should be accounting, because part of it will be accounting for finances and progress made in the restoration process. So I'm glad that that has been raised. The matter was raised by the chief whips last week. And I must say that I think it was good interaction, because we got to appreciate what the thinking of some of the colleagues is with regards to this project, what they believe should be priority and what should not be a priority. Hence, I said, Chair, I'm happy because there's something I would like to raise, which is this. You'll recall that at a time when we appointed the STP, we were in a process of putting together, there was a team which would have been led by Mr. Xaso that would be responsible for a building of a modular structure within the parliamentary precinct. You'll recall that when we then received the costs, what it would have cost us to build that modular structure, vis-a-vis a report we received from, what's that thing, KUHA. It was clear that to build a modular structure at plus minus 300 million, whereas you could use the same amount of money to rebuild the old assembly. Then at that point, a decision was taken that let us rather go the route of rebuilding than to have a temporary structure that would have cost us the same amount of money. I'm raising this because then at the meeting last week, the issue was, what is our priority? Where are we? And the report which came out was that for now, remember during the MPBPS, we were allocated an amount of 118 million. And it was said that's for unforeseen and what expenditure. But for us, that unforeseen expenditure partly was the restoration of offices, or let me not say restoration, but ensuring that the 155 members do have office space. So that was the priority. I'm not saying all of that money would have been used for that. I'm not involved in those kinds of issues. They would be the best people to respond to that. But for me, when we negotiated with the Minister of Finance at that point, my issue to him was, Minister, we must have money because right now honorable members have no office space to operate from. Hence the decision to grant us 118 out of that 2 billion, or besides the 2 billion. Because when there was talk of an increase in the baseline, we said, okay, that we understand. Right now, and members, remember, you were really putting us under pressure that we have no, you're saying people should come, there's no space to operate from, but equally, we still don't have an assembly. So we prioritized. We said that one part of the 118 will be used to secure office space for honorable members. Hence the structure which was presented there. Now, when the chief whips were interacting with us, it would seem the understanding of the chief whips was that we would start with the old assembly. If I may remind honorable members, even the delay for us, the fact that we're starting now, it has to do with the fact that the building had not been handed over to us. Remember, there was a time when the building was with still with the police, and for some months, it went, I think about 6-7 months, we still did not have access to the building. For that matter, even when the Kucha people started, they still did not have control over the building as yet, all right? So now, my understanding has always been that we want to make sure that come second term at least now, members will be settled, they will have offices. Now, having office space means that there would also be IT systems and so on, because remember, most of the members, even in the offices which are destroyed now, lost their gadgets. So, and there's no insurance, unfortunately, for Parliament, so people have not been refunded. So there's a whole lot of work which needs to be done in those offices. Now, my understanding, remember, we're not talking, I hear the Honorable Moletsane, and it's a fair question because I raised it too. When we say we are starting from the 18th of May to the 13th of June, to the 13th or 30th, what are the implications of that? 31st of June? June? Did I write?
June 22nd handover.
Yeah, handover. What are the implications of that? Are we going to compromise quality and so on? But my understanding is that the offices which are currently being remodeled, amongst others, they will not necessarily, I don't know, I've not been there, it may be drywall, it may be partitioning and so on, but what is important is that there will be decent offices, right, space from where members of Parliament will be able to operate from. That's my understanding, but he can take it further than that. Then on the, I don't want to talk about the milestones, I think, of before this work began, because the reality is that there was a bit of confusion. And I think I am quite comfortable now, because the team that is the steering committee, which has been established, is led firstly by the accounting officer of Parliament, who is there for the secretary to Parliament, and then the DG of National Treasury and the DG of Public Works. Now, there's a proposal here that we should not leave the SARA and the Office of the Auditor General. And you are correct, Honorable Member, because we did say that as the building process continues, there must be on-time auditing of the finances and the work that's being done by the Office of the AG. So they've listened, and that will pursue that. The other matter, Honorable Chairperson, which I think will be my last, okay, the investigation. Honorable Kwahube raised the issue of the investigation. Honorable members, you'll recall that a letter which we signed with Chairperson of the NCPOP, instructing the management of Parliament to conduct an investigation. It was after a meeting with the Joint Standing Committee on Financial Management of Parliament. I just don't remember the date. It was either February, 3 weeks or 4 weeks down after the fire. I'm sorry that You know, I did not check, but it's here in my notes. I can come back with the date. And earlier on, reasons given to us for not proceeding were the fact that, no, but we don't have access to the building. But really, it had nothing to do with access to the building, because the issue we were raising is, what are the other issues? What other areas do we need to look into, particularly because before this fire occurred, there were reports which were submitted to us which related to the assessment of the security of Parliament. So there was a, I don't want to say resistance, because I don't know it was resistance, but we were not getting reports. They were not coming until the new STP was appointed. And one of the first things we said in the briefing with him was, we want an investigation to be conducted on the fire, because we cannot throw everything and say it is the police. Indeed, the police have some responsibility of patrolling the Parliament as a national key point. But inside, it has nothing to do with the police. It has everything to do with the Parliamentary Protection Services. And therefore, we needed to have an understanding of even the recommendations, the findings which were made by the Cape Town fire team earlier on, whether any work had been done following that, including when there was fire in March of 2021 or 19, I'm not sure. There were findings made, there were recommendations made, and we needed also to understand whether any of that work had been done. So those were the basics which we simply needed to respond to. The things which were identified as problematic, as risks to Parliament, was their work done? So we didn't get that report. So mandate was, STP, the first thing you do is to conduct this inquiry. Because as Parliament, we had agreed that we also want, other than the police, an independent investigation to be conducted. That independent investigation has been conducted. In fact, what I believe was the last report was given to us 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. Khumbuze kaloku. 2 weeks ago, STP, together with the forensic fire investigators, gave us a report. And I want to suggest to you, honorable members, I know that the meetings of the Joint Standing Committee should be quarterly, that maybe we should request another meeting where the STP then gives you a full briefing of what came out of that investigation. Because that investigation, actually, it's like you're in a movie. If you watch and listen to what happened when this fire broke out, it just tells you that there were weaknesses on the part of Parliament as well, but also the fact that a person could occupy the parliamentary building for plus minus 16 hours inside, then you ask yourself a lot of questions. Where were the people and so on? And we know, of course, that we were told right from the beginning that the staff of the PPS was on leave. The questions you may want to ask now, with everything, once you get the picture, is why were all the members of the PPS on leave at the time? So these are some of the things. That's why I'm saying I don't think right now we would be in a position to give you that report, but it's up to you, chairs, to then decide on a date, maybe before we close, where the STP and team come and present the report with everything, slides and all. It's quite detailed. I mean, we listened to that with Honorable Masondo, and we're just shocked at the amount of information which we received. So I'm therefore suggesting that that should be done. And then you were asking honorable members that there were people who were suspended and so on. Yes, there were people suspended, and the acting STP is one of those. And there too, I don't want to say she was suspended because of the fire, but I'd rather say that there are certain things which they were directed to do, which they did not do, such as, for instance, this investigation, which was never conducted right up until June, July. Nothing had happened in spite of the fact that we had written letters to say this is the directive we are giving. So it would be amongst those issues. I think that's all I would like to say on on this issue. The reason why I raised it about a modular structure. So sometimes you get a sense that when people talk about the old assembly building, right, and how we associate it with the renovation thereof, how we associate it with the modular structure, it is because there was money which would have been used for the modular structure, which is more or less exactly the amount of money which we would use to restore the old assembly. So maybe sometimes people are confusing it with that. But otherwise, the old assembly, there is no, maybe he's the engineer, there is no guarantee that the old assembly would be ready and be done with the speed with which now we are rebuilding or remodeling offices for members. We had given a directive now that when members come back after recess, all members, without exception, should have office space. And that for us is the most important thing. That's number one. Then the number two is old assembly, and it does not mean that no work will be done with regards to the old assembly. No, does not mean all of these things should be running together, but priority should be for members of parliament when they come here for sessions, at least to have a decent office space to operate from. I think those are the issues I wanted to respond to Simon. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Speaker and Co-Chairpersons. I think the Speaker has responded to a lot of issues which have been raised by members. We must just restate the principle that the Secretary to Parliament remains the accounting officer for the purposes of this project. And the other teams are supporting the accounting officer in the implementation of the project. I think the Secretary to Parliament has made an undertaking to this committee that the process shall be transparent, and at all times the Secretary to Parliament, if called upon, he shall come to account to this committee. There was also an agreement that there shall be real-time audit. From time to time, the Auditor General would be involved in auditing the processes. So that point has been taken, and I think there's been agreement to that effect. Insofar as the timelines are concerned, I think the slides that have been presented, particularly I think it's slide 4, depicts the timeframes or the timelines that have been indicated there. That we intend to meet insofar as the project is concerned. But if members want further information insofar as the timelines are concerned, we can provide that information at a later stage. Insofar as the teams are concerned, the inclusion of the heritage in the task teams, I think we can look into that, and we can report back to the committee insofar as that point is concerned. The issue of assets, the assets remain the assets of Parliament, and Parliament remains responsible for the safekeeping of those assets. Insofar as the total facilities management is concerned and the relationship with Public Works, there are processes that have been put in place insofar as that is concerned, but we must just indicate that insofar as the restoration project is concerned, there is an agreement that, and that is why money was appropriated to Parliament and not to Public Works, that Parliament shall remain responsible for the restoration of Parliament. The other issues relating to the empowerment and the appointment of service providers and this and so on and so on, I think I'll request the DBSA to deal with those matters, and the negotiation of fees. I've dealt with the issue of the timelines. The condition of the old assembly chamber, I think it's very important that we should emphasize that the old assembly chamber may look not to have been affected by the fire, but the condition of the old assembly chamber is such that it's not habitable. There is water damage in the assembly, and the carpets are damaged, and the conditions that Simon has indicated are also prevalent in the old assembly chamber, and therefore I'm sure the experts can also confirm that the old assembly chamber would not be a venue that can be used currently for the purposes of anything, whether be it a committee meeting or be it a mini plenary or be it a sitting of the National Assembly. And I'm sure those members who would be willing to take a walk can peep into the assembly and see how damaged the assembly is. Much as it may appear not to have been affected by fire, but I think its condition has been affected by the condition of, by extension of the National Assembly chamber. I would then request my colleagues to respond to other issues that I have not responded to. Yes,
Before you do that, Advocate, there was a question, and I think it needs to be answered by yourself, from Honorable Kwarube in terms of the appointment of staff, whether are the new appointment, what are the arrangements between Public Works and all the necessary or the relevant stakeholders. If you can just clarify that. Thanks.
Chair, I think when I started, I introduced Simon, and I indicated that he has been appointed to assist Parliament to manage the project of this magnitude because Parliament does not have the capacity to do so. So Simon has been appointed to assist Parliament in the management of this project. And as I've indicated, the underlying reason is that we do not have capacity to manage the project of this magnitude.
Okay. Someone is referring to Mr. Mashoko, who was doing the presentation. Thank you. Who's coming in?
Chair, I think I can come in,
Okay.
Advocate, if you can indulge me. I'll just go through questions not in a particular order, but just pick subject matters that are related. There was an issue on rubble removal, on progress in that respect. We mentioned that it's going to start on the 20th of June and complete on the 31st of July. There was work that was undertaken by the engineers in respect of the actual conditional assessments and then the engineering specifications that I explained, which actually led us to be able to know what the tender specifications are going to be. So in terms of progress, it's on stage 1 to stage 4, and construction, I explained, will start on the 20th. In relation to heritage or Sarah being on the task team, indeed we had engagements with Sarah. I'm sure one of the slides I explained that we have a continuous engagement with them. They did indicate that they will make a resource available to be in one of the committees that we're going to as part of the team, but they'll still retain their regulatory independence. So much as a team member will be with us to assist us in compliance and ensure that we don't delay in terms of permit applications, but their independence will still be enforced. But we appreciate that emphasis on that governance point. Old Assembly, will it be a separate project or phase? Indeed, in terms of our implementation, Old Assembly will be run independent of the new Assembly. It will be a separate contract, a different contractor, and professional teams that relate to that particular work package. And the idea is to manage risk as well, that we don't put all work in one company that probably may have a risk of failure, or if there are any contractual disputes, we may find ourselves having delays. But with that said, there's still work that needs to be done on the old assembly to make sure that it is compliant. Much as some of the offices have not been affected, but a lot of work needs to be done for statutory requirements. And if you do work of that nature, you inevitably have to demolish some corridors to make sure that they become compliant. And that process, with the SARA processes, may take that we run the project in no less than 18 months. But the project team has noted the request and, of course, the need to unlock committee rooms and offices. And when a definitive scope and a definitive timelines have been put together, in our next engagement with the committee, we'll report accordingly. In relation to the artworks indeed were part of the asset verification, but it was a separate process. They do not form part of the assets that are going to be reported to the AG, because the valuation of those assets is different from the normal valuation of other assets. So we did do the verification and track where they are, and we're working with Dr. Kirsten, who's a specialist, in-house specialist on artworks that fall under heritage, and some have been removed and put in a safe storage, and then there are some that still need to be removed on the basement storeroom, and before they can be restored, they need to be sanitized because the mold is in a bad condition. So we have a register of all those assets, and we know where they are and how we're going to take them out of those rooms for safe storage. CIDB, indeed, it is a requirement that when you go out on tender, you have to advertise a project on the right CIDB grading. So by default, it's going to be CIDB level 9, but I think that it should not be about the grading per se, but about the broader objectives of the program. Indeed, CIDB has what they call a build program, and it dictates that apart from appointing the main contractor, there are certain requirements that you need to follow. One of those requirements is to have learnerships that you need to accommodate as part of the program. And one of those is that you must have a mentor that will look at the students that are brought in to be under supervision of the professionals. And then you also look at people that are unemployed. There's different categories that the build program has. People that are unemployed, there may be small